damn thing working? Yes, I think it is, isn't it? Good. Yes, I love coming to Canada. I grew up in Africa, and I should know something about size and scale of things. But, you know, there I was yesterday. I was thinking, gosh, my friend Roger Christian, the director, he lives in Toronto. So why don't I tomorrow just hop on a train and nip down to Toronto, have dinner with him, and then go on to England the following day. And so I busily got the old thing out and started looking up things, and I discovered it takes 3 days by train to get to Toronto. And you know, the scale is always our problem. I mean, at one level, the great Gimli actually is possibly a funny character because he actually doesn't realize that he's small. He has a different sense of scale. On the other level, let me just put this down for a second. On the other level, the scale of the universe, all of us get it wrong. Do you realize how big the universe really is? We live in a galaxy packed with stars. There are what, 200 to 400 billion stars in our galaxy. But there are 200 to 400 billion galaxies in our universe. Now, this is what we can see. We can only see about 1/6 of the universe. We can't see where the rest of the matter is. Now, what about our universe? Well, they now believe that there's more than one universe. How many are there? The old number used to be 10 to the 500th power. I think that's a number that's bigger than all the atoms in our universe. But that's out of date now. The new number is 10 to the 1000th power to the 10,000th power. Alternative universes, alternate universes. It's enormous out there. I mean, it's just vast. It is so vast that anything can happen and anything will happen. You know, there's a chap called Boltzmann who came up with the idea of Boltzmann brains, because the nothingness of space isn't actually nothing at all. It is very active. Out of quantum flux, an entire Volkswagen bus, probably with an entire load of people in it, can suddenly materialize and disappear. And he postulated that perhaps entire intelligences could emerge and disappear, or even emerge and find a way in that billionth of a fraction of a second to stabilize themselves. We are the most fortunate generation that ever lived. We live at a time where our horizons are expanding so incredibly. It is amazing. We're also living in the most glorious age for women, by the way. We've probably got a lot of archaeologists here and physical anthropologists. Now, you'll correct me, but it is my understanding that until the end of the Stone Age, the average life expectancy of women was very short. I mean, you will find male skeletons in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, even sometimes in their 60s. You almost never find a female skeleton over the age of 30. Life expectancy for women up until the end of the Stone Age was somewhere around 21, am I correct? By the Roman period, it's only what, 25 years, somebody? Anybody here? Very good, about then? You girls are just so darn lucky. You know, you're living in an age where you're treated as equals. You're living in an age where you are not being sold off to some strange old man at the age of 10 or something like that, swapped by another cave tribe, you know. It's a remarkable time. And of course, we don't really quite understand it. And we certainly don't behave as if it's any different from anything else we've been to. You, look at you. You're all well-fed, you're well-clothed, incredibly well-educated. You're all living in a country that has a high standard of living and virtually full employment. I hope you realize how lucky you are, because I've just come back from Romania and Poland, and they're doing awfully well in comparison with countries like Greece and Portugal and Spain. Yeah, it's a big old world out there, and we have our place in it. And I suppose if you were a wee dwarf, you'd say, the truth of the matter is, you know, as long as you got a good axe, the world is a safer place. Right, now I understand there are some people who want to ask some questions. Anyone got any questions? Oh, good. I'll go. Oh, sorry. Who's got the microphones? All right. Or indeed go to somebody with a microphone, if you're close enough. Right, fire away, young man.
First off, I'd like to say I'm a huge fan.
Thank you. My mother used to say that, but thank you very much.
What was your most memorable moment when shooting Lord of the Rings?
I think that wonderful moment right at the end when I could get rid of that damn prosthetic, but... Look, there were so many memorable moments there. My fellow actors were really wonderful. And just in case there are any young ladies here, no, I didn't hang out for a long time with Ollie. Ollie was 19, I was 55. You know, we just didn't quite have a great deal in common outside the film. But they were great people, and I suppose the most fun you really have when you're working on films is actually the fun that your fellow actors bring to the set and the joy that they bring. So what I experienced of that was certainly the most memorable stuff. And then there's this funny little sort of Hobbit come dwarf, Peter Jackson, who made an entire film industry from nothing in order to service this film. And of course, you're privileged to have here Sir Richard Taylor, who is a special effects man, a behind the scenes man of such enormous genius that I mean, and one of the best people you could ever meet. I remember once, I was off on one of my trips up the island, and I stopped at a second-hand shop, and I got talking to a guy, and I found that he was the man who had done a panorama for the military museum up in the desert, the New Zealand desert. And I went back and I saw Richard, and I said, Richard, met this chap, and we talked about it. He immediately hopped in his car, drove up to him to offer him a job because he admired his work so much. The guy actually foolishly turned him down, but there's a generosity of spirit there that you should know about, and I urge you to go and see Richard, because he's one of the very great men we have. Anyway.
Thank you.
Right, is that enough of silly avoidance of a question there? Very good.
Hi. Over here.
Yes. Now you see, there's a bit of dwarf in that woman there. The lovely color of the hair. It's lovely. Unfortunately, he's a very young dwarf. He hasn't grown his beard yet, you know. But you know, it'll have. We have great problems, we dwarves, with you know, the girls wearing beards as well. You know, you're getting all sorts of trouble in the pub. You see something that looks very good and promising. You say, "Oi, hello there, lovely," and you get an axe in your face.
Okay, my question is, which did you like to do better, Lord of the Rings or Sliders?
Lord of the Rings or Sliders? Being poisoned by that awful prosthetic makeup which made me itch for months on end, or being poisoned by those awful scripts that were built, designed by complete illiterates who didn't understand a word of science and had never read any science fiction. Oh dear. Damn, that's a hard question. Yes, well, I think on the whole, I preferred Lord of the Rings. Thank you very much. I still get angry about Sliders because we could have had we could still be on the air. We could still be going anywhere in time and anywhere in space. It was the most perfect opportunity for writers with imagination to go anywhere and do everything. And we didn't. We did the Tremors episode. We did the Twister episode. Only our twisters were different. You know, a Northern twister has a little bit at the bottom, it gets wider and wider and wider. Our twisters were different. They were big at the bottom and got smaller and smaller. Which made the difference, of course. We did Night of the Living Dead. We did the Island of Dr. Moreau, even used the same masks, I think, from the film, from that one. You name it, we did it. And that made me very annoyed, basically, because we could have done everything. We could have... never mind. Enough. So, right. All right, anyone else want to open old wounds?
Greetings.
Breathe in.
I was wondering what it was like to play Treebeard.
We are going to open old wounds, aren't we? Yeah. There's a marvelous radio host in New York, and I went on his show and I was talking about Treebeard and the problems I had with it, and he was saying, well, I've got a lot of Tolkien scholars who are friends of mine, and you know, we'll ask them, and we'll put their advice on. The first bit of advice was, well, it's impossible to do anyway in terms of film. The second was along the same lines. The third was, there is only one person in the world that can do this. James Earl Jones. And that I tend to agree with, actually, but very tricky, because you see, the character in the book is so slow. You know, he's the oldest living thing on the earth, and he's very, it takes so long, and you can't do that in film. But at the same time, you've got to find the character and do something that creates the slowness and the age and the gentleness and the extraordinary power of the character as well. Added to which, he doesn't breathe. I mean, how does a tree talk when it doesn't darn well breathe? So we tried everything. I thought, let's be fanciful here. You see, perhaps he breathes in through the leaves, the pores, so perhaps it's more like a... Now, we could do that as a basic layer, and then we could put the words on top of it. And then, anyway, we need to get it slow. We need great sort of sounds like, you know, the way that they magnify whale noises and really slow things down so that we tried everything. We went on days and days and days. It was hopeless. No, then I said, no, think about it. He moves. This is not only a talking tree, It's a walking tree. You know, now we've got to try and get something in the verb, in the sound. We've got to get the squelch of those roots coming out of the ground, and let's add more sound. And it went on for days. In the end, we just had to come back to something that was fairly simple, and try and do it with, speaking on the in, take a breath as well as the out. Take a breath. Hopeless. I lost more sleep over Treebeard than I think any character I've ever played. It's a compromise, and people are charitable enough to say that it's good. In truth, I count it one of the biggest failures of my career, and I still don't know. Maybe they should have gone with James Earl.
No!
Yes. All right. Next question.
Oh, right here.
So,
Hi, my wife and I are huge fans of you, and I guess my question is, when you were on Sliders, and that's mainly where I know you from and grew up watching, what was your favorite episode, I guess, that you had done, and as well, the character, like your character that you played, what was your overall impression of him? Like when you got the script, did you fall right into it, or did it take you a little bit to get into?
well, I thought I was getting into something to play a brilliant, quirky, difficult, bloody-minded, vain scientist. I didn't really expect after the first few episodes to be told, John, what we want you to do is to play the bad scientist in Lost in Space. Yeah, right. If I'd known that, I wouldn't have done it, you know. I remember I was walking in Westwood in Los Angeles, and a guy ran up to me and he said, John, I teach physics at UCLA, and we start our classes off with reference to the recent episode of Sliders, and because it's a very good jumping off point for introducing people to, things like quantum physics and relativistic time dilation and stuff like that. And he said, all I would beg you to do, because every young person in America is watching this at the moment, whatever you do, don't make the scientist look like the bad guy. Don't make him to look like a fool. Which I certainly completely agree with. Science is hugely important. And I mean, some of you may know that I use these opportunities to particularly encourage young people and older people who already have an interest in science to think about the dark side of the Force and to look at organizations like the Planetary Society, for instance. So I take that seriously. I think you can have fun with a character. I think Arturo's vanity is part of his personal life, but I think he's also a darn good scientist with a brilliant young student. And you can have lots of fun there. I didn't see that it was necessary to pit Arturo against his student. But we're dealing with people who, they're not, they're literally not rocket scientists. And people who have so little understanding of science itself that they don't understand really how important the image of science is. And for those of us who have been teachers or who are teachers and know how precarious this world is and how dependent we are on technology, it is very important that people. I mean, I can't tell you how many times people come up to me and say, I ask them what they do, and they say, I'm a geek. Those geeks are the people who are creating the jobs, are making the dispersal of information possible. We owe those geeks, and let us respect them. And for goodness sake, let's give them a better sense of their value in society. You know, I love the arts. I'm an arts man. I'm a history buff, and I'm completely innumerate. But let's have our respect for technology and science. Right. Ah, yes.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm so far back here. I'm an opera singer, so your incredible voice.
Wonderful. Go on. Continue with the question.
Well, you singing a British tar and things like that has always been great. I wondered how much singing you do.
Well, you see, there I was in a restaurant in Los Angeles. I'm with my then business manager and her ex-rock and roller husband, two golden, beautiful people, and as she would now like to be referred to, the previous administration. And we're sitting there, and this woman comes up to me and says, "Oh my God. Oh my God, it's you! It's really you!" At which point I decided to remain silent for a second. She said, "I can't believe this! I've got every single one of your CDs! Mr. Pavarotti!" At which point, the previous administration, a woman of a considerable wit, said, "I'm terribly sorry, you know, he doesn't speak too much English." To which I said, "No, no, 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 no. Autografo, sì? Bene. Luciano Pavarotti." The answer to that is that I could have been a great singer. You know, I could have been a great singer. Every woman I've ever loved has told me that I'm the worst singer in the world.
Oh.
Mine is a tragic life. Does that answer your question?
Mostly. What is the best way you prepare your voice for all the speaking you do?
Oh, I don't know. I suppose actors who are trained at RADA and places like that, we all have to do these stupid speech exercises, you know, and we stand around looking like a real gormless idiot going, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, a peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? She sells seashells on the seashore. The shells she sells are seashells, I'm sure. Unique, New York, New York, unique. So you do that, and but you know, I got an idea that the terrible thing about preparation for parts and things like that, I never found a consistent way of doing it. When I was on the stage, you know, you'd sometimes come in the night and you'd go through the entire play, preparing every line and saying it and all that sort of thing, and you'd go on and you give an indifferent performance. Then there were the times you rushed into the theatre just in the half, got your costume on, galloped onto stage, and suddenly you gave a good performance. There's a lovely story told by Maggie Smith about Olivier, Sir Laurence Olivier, who was a very, very great Lord Olivier, actually, was a very great English actor, for those of you who are a bit young and probably don't know about these things. He was a brilliant actor, and I saw his Othello, and it was always breathtaking. But there was one particular night where he was off the Richter scale. the entire company gathered in the wings to watch him. And these were guys who'd seen him rehearse, who'd been with him for 100 performances, or actually a bit less than that, because he had cancer at the time. So, but they'd seen a lot, and they all stood in the wings and watched this man just off the ground. And Maggie was delegated to go to him afterwards, and she knocked on the door, and she said, and he said, "Come in," and she said that, you know, there he was, half his makeup off, slumped there, you know, a man in his 60s allowing his belly, which was very hard tone, just to relax, you know, and he looked there, and he looked like a man who had completely failed. And she said, "Lawrence, you know, the entire company has asked me to come and tell you that was an extraordinary and electrifying, possibly the greatest performance you've ever done." And he looked at her, and he said, "Yes, I know. But I don't know how or why." You know, if you knew how the magic was, if you could box it, if you could put it in your pocket every night and walk on the stage, you know, you would be a really great actor. But it doesn't happen like that, you know. The Greeks used to believe that really when you wore the mask, because all Greek drama was masked drama, when you put the mask on, the god came and inhabited you. And that sometimes happens with actors. Sometimes on stage in a great part, in a great performance, with great actors around you, suddenly you get a little bit lost, and somebody else is there, and all you're doing is standing back and marveling and saying, "Where's this come from?" At its best, stage acting can open up regions in your mind and your heart and your brain that you never knew existed. I'm sorry, that way off the beat there. Yes.
Hi there.
Where are you? Ah, there. Hi.
What's going on?
Hey.
My sister and I are huge fans, and we know you mostly from Princess Diaries 2.
Ah.
So
I want to say here and now, I demand a revote. That American girl, she has some charm, I'm told. She's had a measure of success. But my nephew had what it takes. 500 years of inbreeding. And look at that face. Think about that face on a postage stamp. The country could have made a fortune just turning out new editions of stamps every year. Ah, an opportunity lost. You were going to say, go on, Cohen.
I honestly can't ask a question after that. I guess, what was it like working with Julie Andrews and Anne Hathaway and Chris Pine and seeing the latter two succeed as they have been recently?
Well, of course, every one of them is a really, really, really good actor or actress. And it's great, you know. It's just, you work with people who have so much talent, and you just watch them, particularly when they're young, like Anne, and, you know, just growing into she's a young girl, she's a young woman, she's a fully grown woman, and she's suddenly taking major, you know, grown-up parts. Terrific. Of course, Julie Andrews and I first worked together probably before your dad was old enough to meet your mum. We did something called Victor Victoria together. And Julie is a remarkably gifted person. I don't ever think she had the respect given to her, perhaps by the profession, because she was so damn clever and able, you know. I mean, Sound of Music and those other things. She was so popular, and she made it look so easy. But this is a woman who's a world-class singer, a world-class dancer, and a damn good actress. And more than that, a lovely person as well. And somehow we're a lot happier with one person who's good at one thing. People who are good at more than one thing, they're probably a little bit greedy, aren't they, really? But it's great to see them. And young Chris doing well, too. Very, very good. Yeah, but those youngsters, they've got a lot more to do and give. The unfair thing, of course, in life, in film and in Hollywood, the life expectancy for an actress is very limited. I remember a darling friend of mine, I won't mention her name this time, but a very good actress, a fine star, television star, and she'd done some films as well. I said, "So, darling, what are you doing?" And she said, "Well, you know, John, I'm 39 now. I get up in the morning. I'm very happy with what I see in the mirror. But when I see it on camera, I'm not happy with it anymore." And she says, "It's time for me to move on and into directing." And she's become quite a successful director. But the shallowness of our sensibilities is, you know, we want our actresses to be young and beautiful, and we don't really know what to do with them when they cease to be young, even though they are, to my eyes at least, extremely beautiful. It's a very hard life to be an actress. It's hard enough to be an actor. Being a successful actress is, I don't know how they do it, and I don't know where they find the deep moral resources to continue. Wonderful. Bless them all. Yes.
I've seen you in quite a few roles. You've just mentioned one of my favorites. I think the first time I saw you, and possibly many here, is Indiana Jones. And I even saw you in what was basically a little more than a cameo role, which I loved in Shadows in the Sun. Anyway, probably nobody's here have seen that. Such a small little movie, but I loved it. My question is, what is your favorite role? Do you have one, and why?
I have a very easy answer to this one. My really favorite role is the next one.
Ah. Good answer.
I met a couple of guys today who are in their 50s and about to retire or retired. You lucky bastards, that's all I can say. It doesn't work like that for us actors, you know. We go on and on and on, but we never know when the phone is going to go. And that, for many people, brings a huge measure of insecurity. Because one day, the phone won't go. You know, there will be those longer gaps between, you know, job offers and things like that. And then there'll be that gap which goes on. So you never know which job is going to be your last job. So how do you cope with this? Well, my coping mechanism is one that some of you may be able to use in other ways. I treat every job as if it is my last job. You know, this is the last time anyone's ever going to employ me. This is the last time I'm ever going to be working with great actors and fellow actors around me. So I'm going to try and do the job as well as I can and be as pleasant as I can and make life as comfortable for those around me as I can and have as much fun as I can. And if that's it, if you can go home at the end of the day saying, you know what, I did what I should have done today. I did my best. Then there won't be any recriminations later. And that's really why the next job is the one that I really, because that's the job that I'm going to do with more determination, more preparation, more. I'm going to really do. I don't care whether it's 3 lines or something, but those 3 lines are going to be the best I can possibly do for that job. So I'm looking forward to that one. Actually, there are still 1 or 2 jobs. I think the phone may yet ring for a year or 2 anyway, but and they better. I've got a 7-year-old daughter. Getting her through Oxford is going to be expensive. All right, anyway, hey, well, no pressure, no parental pressure. Sorry.
Up here.
Yes.
Hello. My question with going over all these smaller roles that you've done. In the 1990s, you were involved in a couple of video games. You were a Paladin in the Wing Commander series, I think 3 and 4. And then in Dune 2000, you were the Atreides Mentat. Now, my question is, how were you chosen for those roles, and how did you prepare for them?
Well, the first part is that I have a great voice agent in Los Angeles called Vox, and they're really marvelous. They tend to represent some of the best voice actors available. So they get a script, or they get a call from somebody saying, "Would John be interested in?" And the truth of the matter is, John is interested in working. I mean this. I tend to rise fairly early in the morning. I love going to work. I just love walking on a set or into a studio, or it's what I like doing, and I'd sooner work than not work. I always think that acting's a muscle, and you've got to use it. You've got to use it regularly. Don't get too posh and too. I don't do things like that. I don't do radio. It's beneath me. Rubbish. Rubbish. If you can create a character just with your voice in a studio, then that really helps you when it comes to other characters that are on film. It's one less thing to worry about. So it's often just people, phone up and say, "Will John do this?" Or, "We thought of John, is he in town?" And sometimes they will actually come to you, basically because the cartoonists in the studio want a day out, and so they'll fly somewhere, on the pretense that we really need to do this. So, let's go to Calgary and do it. And how do I prepare? Well, you read the script, you talk to the director, and you say, "All right, let's have a little stab at it." And they go, "John, it's a little bit slower than that." Or, John, yeah, take it down a couple of notches, will you? John, could you put a Croatian accent in there? Like a certain director I know who, when I said, "What are you doing?" He said, I'm writing your scene. And I said, "Well, he wouldn't say that. He'd be more inclined to say, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. All right, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. There's the script. As soon as it's dark, we start. Oh, by the way, your character, when he's high or happy, he bursts into Gilbert and Sullivan. Incorporate that at the end of the scene, will you?" And you do.
Mr. Rhys Davies, born up here.
Behind the lights.
The light. Yes, go on.
Mr. Rhys Davies,
Sir.
born in the old country myself. My family and I remember you from the first time in the episode of Shogun, I believe it was.
Yes.
Excellent work, and
Thank you.
I've dated myself a bit there. But I understand you were born in Salisbury.
I was, yes.
But with a name like Rhys Davies, that's a Welsh connection. I'm wondering where that connection is and when that connection was.
Well, my parents were both Welsh. My father was called, his Christian name was Rhys, I was christened Henry John Davis. Unfortunately, when I came to join British Actors Equity, there was a John Davis and there was a Henry Davis. They suggested Davis John, along the lines of John Strafford, who was Strafford Johns. But I found I had enough psychological difficulties with my personality without turning the whole thing inside out anyway. So I took my father's Christian name and called myself Rhys, John Rhys. And they said, yes, we'll allow you to do that, but you have to be John Rhys Davis. So I made that terrible mistake. Listen, all you young, aspiring actors, for goodness sake, if you are going to be an actor, pick a short name. Spending a day writing John Rhys Davies, if I come back, I'm going to call myself Sade or Pie or something like that. You know, Sting. It's pretty hopeless. But my parents were both Welsh. My father was an engineer before and during the war, and he was working for the Wilson Dorset Bus Company, and hence I was untimely dropped in Salisbury. I believe the dialogue went like this. My mother was intending to drop me in Wales because it was important that I would be doubly qualified to play rugby for Wales, you know, in the event 20 years on that the call came, sort of thing. So it was an air raid, actually. Good God, Rhys, they're going to bomb the gasworks, my mother said, and promptly went into labour, which is why I got born in Salisbury. I trust that you're suitably impressed by that.
Hey,
Oh, hello.
We've recently seen Elijah Wood reprise his role of Frodo in
Yes.
the Hobbit movie. I was wondering if in the future we might see you reprise your role for a short cameo in perhaps the third Hobbit movie?
Well, I haven't been asked to, but here's the thing. I think I'm only a tiny dwarf. I mean, they could make me a lot tinier, but... and these days they can just dial it in. But I did go down to the studio, as some of you may know. You may have seen the behind-the-scenes thing. And I did go down to the studio, and I walked in, and there I saw him. And I had to rush up to him and throw my arms around him, and I said, "Daddy!" In short, I can't see how, and I can't imagine it happening, but I sure would rather like to do it. You know, it was very odd going down there. It's like going back to your old school, you know, where you've been rather important in your old school in your time, and you walk in, and everyone's saying, "Who's this old codger here?" "Hi, John. Great to see you." Yesterday's news, I tell you. It's very odd because I haven't felt that sort of, oh, I'm not in this. I'm not part of this anymore. I haven't felt like that since I was 23, 24, and I went back to my old school and they didn't know me, silly little buggers. Anyway, next question, sorry.
At what point in your life did you think that you were going to become an actor?
Yes, it was a terrible mistake, wasn't it? Yes, in truth, my father went out to Africa after the war, and he became a police officer, and we went out there, and I grew up as a sort of wild young man out in Africa, and then they sent me back to England to be educated, which I did not like. I was a feral delinquent is really the word we're looking for. I mean, any other school, the bobbies would have been around, I'd have been arrested, and I'd have a criminal record as long as your arm by the time I got to 14, I suppose. But in those days, they didn't do that. They tried to look at a disturbed little boy and find a way of getting his energies. The first play that I ever saw, I was 11. It was a school play, and our tradition at that school in Cornwall, Truro School, where there were no other theatres in Cornwall. So it was really quite a major cultural event, and the school play played to 800 people for 3, 4, 5, 6 nights a week when it was on. So I was 11, disturbed as heck. And the first play I ever saw was Oedipus Rex. It hit me like a hammer. I went straight out. You weren't allowed into the main library until you were a third former. I was only a first former. But I knew exactly what I wanted. And I went up and I found Aristotle on tragedy. And that night I learned what I can still tell you now. Tragedy, then, is the imitation of an action, complete and of some importance, acted, not narrated, in language enhanced by distinct and varying means, and through pity and fear, effecting its purgation of these emotions. And I knew then that my destiny was to be the greatest damn writer of tragedies that you would ever meet. And so they stuck me in school plays, and they discovered, I discovered Shakespeare. Shakespeare, when you have rage, Shakespeare gives you the language and the eloquence and the power that you can use. And believe me, I used it. And not many teachers have been told, "You common cry of curs, I banish you." Or safe from the wolf's black jaw and the wild ass's hoof. I go now, sir. Anyway, it was, as you can see, I was a nutcase, really. I probably still am. But here's the thing. It gave me an eloquence. It gave me an outlet for my anger and fury. And that's one of the reasons why we should be teaching our youngsters great words, great language, Shakespeare, in fact. And when I left school, it was my intention to be a writer. I went to university, and that was a big mistake. But anyway, they're actually going to give me an honorary D.Lit in June, which is rather odd, really, since I think I skived every class there. But I did a lot of drama. And the idea was, you see, that I was going to become an actor because I could act, and I was stupid enough to believe I could earn my keep as an actor. Lasted for years, and it actually happened because I was too ignorant to realize that I probably couldn't. It's just one of those things, really. Bit like Ronnie Reagan and the Cold War. Everyone knew you couldn't win the Cold War, except nobody told Ronnie Reagan. So he won it. So the idea was that all actors spend at least 6 months of the year out of work. In those 6 months, I would be writing the masterpieces for which you would now be doubtlessly giving me a standing ovation. 1 a year, 2 a year. They would come, if at least from my creative fingers, you know. And the rest of the time, I'd be acting and learning my craft. And I left RADA Sunday night. I started work in the theatre Monday morning. And I had 7 weeks out of work in my first 5 years. And I kept working as an actor. And I did do some writing. I've still done some writing. But I certainly haven't done what I should have done, which is a lot of writing. And if ever I can get the damned IRS and every damn taxman in the world off my back, I will go back and do some writing. But you know, it was, you know what they say, if you want to make God laugh, tell him you have a plan.
Hi. As
you know, in The Hobbit, there are about 400 dwarves, and all of them are main characters. But in The Lord of the Rings, you were the only one. So I was just wondering, you know, with J.R.R. Tolkien's extensive and complex world, you know, what it was like being the only dwarf and portraying that section of his great story by yourself.
Well, at one level, you understand why I didn't really want to do The Hobbit. Why be one of 13 when you've been one of one? Added to which, in the memorable words of Peter Jackson, Walt Disney was right. 7 dwarves is all you can really effectively manage. But I was proud to represent the great nation of the dwarves. Fierce, loyal, passionate, afraid of nothing. Well, unless those spooky things, you know, that come out at you and, you know, ghosty things, well, they're a different thing altogether because, but you see, you'll go to that forest, and I kid you not, the stories that come out of that forest are terrifying. There is a witch in that forest, and if you set your eyes upon her, you are never the same again. You are changed. And of course, once he does set his eyes on Galadriel, he is never the same again. He hasn't got his prejudices against the elves are changed. He falls completely and irrevocably in love with her. And at that wonderful moment, you know, when she's giving him all presents and he is asked, what did she give you? I asked for one lock, for one hair from her golden head. She gave me 3. It's love. It's puppy love. Yes, I like the dwarf. I think he's a great character. Yeah. You fall in love with them, you see. I mean, it's some strange bubbling part of my psyche that is a dwarf. Yeah. I think it's about time the dwarf went now, don't you? Are we done?
What was it like working on Indiana Jones?
Tiring. But you know, I had some of the most beautiful camels that you have ever seen. The blue eyes of one of them, even when she spat at me. I love this camel. And I do not know why Indy has got such a thing about camels. He blows my mother-in-law's car up, and he won't let me collect a few camels. However, I love the man. This side idolatry, so there you are. You've all been wonderful. Thank you for putting up with me.